This is the first engineering building for Pratt Whitney. What? Even before they had some funding, two of the engineers from the Wright Aeronautical Company come and say, look, Fred, we're with you. We believe in this air-cooled engine. We believe in you. Let's start designs in my garage. So this is Andy Wilgoose's garage in New Jersey. And he has a friend, George Meade, who's coming to start the designs. Footnote, what is it about garages? Steve Jobs and Wozniak, Apple, garage.
The Wright brothers.
Amazon company, Jeff Bezos, right, for 11 years, books in the garage.
Yeah.
Charlie Command, I have an idea for Lyft. Where's he started? His mom's garage in West Hartford. What's it about garages? Yeah, the Wright brothers.
It's the largest room in the house.
And it's got the best air light. It's got the light. You open the doors, I got plenty of light for my design. So here's Andy Wilgoose drawing up the first designs. The museum has a blueprint dated July 25th, 1925 from this garage.
I have that too.
And we have that table. And we have that slide. This is what the Pratt & Whitney Company looked like in 1925. We might have forgotten how prosperous and leading edge Hartford area was. It's kind of on the down slope in 1925, but still pretty phenomenal. There are 32 buildings on the site. And this is the plant. This is what the plant would have looked like when Fred went and asked for that money. When the deal was sealed, this is the port of the plant. Oh, where? Right there. This is Fred Rentschler in front of the beginning of the section that he was allowed to start business in. 7,000 square feet. There were tobacco products there, and it was a warehouse, and they had to offload some of that stuff. So 7,000 square feet is about the size of a tennis court. So Pratt & Whitney started on the size of a tennis court. Okay, a little context. One of the things I used to always like to ask new Pratt & Whitney employees, was there ever a Mr. Pratt and Mr. Whitney? Did Fred Rentschler ever know him? Yes, there were, and no, he didn't. So, Francis Pratt and Amos Whitney, mechanics, mechanical engineers, lots of different terms used. They're coming to Hartford because of the coal firing business. If you were in that business, if you had that inclination, you came to Hartford. The coal firing was considered the college of mechanics. They came, they eventually met each other, became friends, and Pratt became the superintendent of the Phoenix Iron Works, also in Hartford, and he brings Mr. Whitney on with him. As a side hobby, they begin to build machine tools, and they begin to become very good at it. In 1864, Francis Pratt designs the first production milling machine. They sell 100,000 of them. In 1988, Francis Pratt is elected to the Machine Tool Hall of Fame for that milling machine. Pratt & Whitney Company, machine tools, is going to make pretty good business. They're going to incorporate in 1860, just before the Civil War, and they're going to have a lot of demand for their machine tools. Here's a cut from their brochure. They have over 600 offerings between different types of machines and different sizes of machines. At the Pratt hangar, if you come, we have one of the original Pratt & Whitney machine tools from that era. I'll show you a small later. They quickly come up against a problem. If you're making guns, you don't want to have custom-made parts. It's great for the first time, but you need a spare part, doesn't fit. Oh, it's all custom-made, handmade. Well, baloney, right? If I have 10 pieces, 10 trigger housings and 10 guns, I want them to fit all around. Eli Whitney and Samuel Colt began the journey of developing the technology for interchangeable parts. So did Pratt & Whitney. But they came up to a problem. Yes, sir?
Just to be clear, there is no relationship between Eli Whitney and Amos Whitney.
Correct. Yes.
That's just coincidence on a night.
Are you in the Whitney family? Good job. Are we?
I did a lot of looking. I was trying to find a connection.
Yeah.
There isn't any.
As it turns out, the big enabler was measuring devices. Not only could we not measure the tolerance needed for interchangeable parts, we didn't agree on what the inch was. There was no standard inch. If you wanted the standard yard, you have to go down to Washington. There's a bar, it's in a safe. Okay, there it is. Not something you can do on the machine shop floor. So not only did they have to develop these measuring devices, but agree on what the standard inch was. They hired these two professors, and in 1879, they came up with some equipment that could measure up to 50 thousandths of an inch. 6 years later, 50 millionths of an inch. So the Pratt & Whitney name, and the Pratt & Whitney name today, there's a Pratt & Whitney Measurement Systems company. It's still the vestiges from this part of the Pratt & Whitney group. They're still making superfine micrometers.
And they're in Bloomfield.
In Bloomfield. So the Pratt & Whitney gauging methods really allowed the advent of interchangeable parts. Back to our story. They assembled a team in August of 1925. There's 25 of them. They're in a relatively small area: engineering, manufacturing, shop offices, quite crowded. 25 employees. Their contact person for Niles B. Mountain Pond makes them a challenge. If you can finish assembling this engine before Christmas Eve, by Christmas Eve, 1925, I will buy everybody in the company a turkey dinner. Well, the story goes, the employees were so confident, the day after they made that proposal, they all went down to the local supermarket and ordered the biggest turkey dinner they could find and charged it to Niles B. Mountain Pond. They all went back to see Fred and told him what they had done, and everyone smiled, but they knew what the mission was. And they finished that engine on Christmas Eve. Footnote for Carl, me. After my first Christmas, 1973, at Pratt, I get a check, and I get my check, and in the check is also a $25 extra check. It says turkey money. I don't know what that's about. I don't know this Pratt Whitney story. So at least for the first couple of years that I worked there, Pratt was still remembering this accomplishment, $25 for turkey. My wife said, "Oh, you made the right choice of company. You got turkey dinner." Now one day, Fay Rentschler visits this small but bustling little area, and the people there had thought, what are we going to name this first engine? They had agreed on insects, some kind of insect. And then when Fay Rentschler comes, she says, "Ooh, this whole area sounds like a beehive of activity." I will tell you, gentlemen, that when my wife suggests something like this in the situation, I better incorporate it pretty quickly, right? So the name WASP is born by Fay Rentschler. So the WASP engine. Mead and Rentschler are going to develop a test program. I mean, they've done this before. They're not new to the business, but I will tell you, I will challenge you, everybody's here had a project, you've measured everything 50 times, but there's always something in the back of your mind that can go wrong, and I'm sure that was in their back of their mind. If this engine starts, we're going to slowly increase the throttle and see what she's got. December 28th, 3 days after Christmas, it's time. Many people have seen this picture. Of the 25 original employees, 23 of them are portrayed here. Let's point them out. Yep. So we've got Andy Wilgoose and George Mead, the two guys in the garage. Beside them is Fred Rentschler. John Bohr, a gentleman that took from Wright Aeronautical, excellent in the shop. He's the first shop superintendent. They have stories of him with wild hair running through the corridors, somebody to be reckoned with. and Don Brown. Don Brown, factory manager, will become the first president of Pratt & Whitney after Fred Bunchler gets bumped up to corporate. And then Charlie Marks, the tooling engineer. I like this one because I've been in production. Jeff, you've been in production. Everybody's got time for the picture except the tooling guy, right? You've been in production, the tools are no good. The tools are late. What's happening with the tools? So poor Charlie Marks wasn't allowed to be in the picture.
Besides the first president, Don Brown is the longest sitting president of the company in the history of the company.
So there they are. And one other personal note. When I started in 1973, there was no mentorship, there was no training program. I sat in front of a guy named Walt from East Hartford. First couple of days I came in, I wore a blue striped shirt, I had yellow type of pants. He said, "Carl, you got a minute? You see what kind of, Carl, you know what kind of clothes I have? I have 11 white shirts, black pants, and brown pants, and 3 ties. Look around you, Carl." I have now got white pants, black trousers, and brown trousers. So from this moment, so when I started, this was what all the people were wearing. It starts. The third test run, we make it. 420 horsepower, 645 pounds, 1900 RPM. This is the beginning of the Wasp engine. A little bit about the logo. From my earliest research and literature, the logo has always looked basically like this with the eagle and the words around it. This is the first newspaper printed in December 1926. It's the first company newspaper, the Beehive. And in the bottom, the Pratt logo, just as you remember. Now the Pratt logo has changed over the years. The eagle's gotten trimmer, the wings have gotten longer, he's gotten a little more color to his feathers. But this has been the same basic logo. There is no story I've been able to find on how the logo was developed. So I'll tell you my story. 1925, most people had not seen an airplane. Airplanes were magical, they were mystical. And the ones they had seen, there are barnstorming events around the company with old World War I planes. What do? They crash into barns, they flip over. So my initial impression of airplanes isn't quite that good. So what better bird to put in the center than the American eagle, the bald eagle? Majestic in flight, everybody feels comfortable with it. Let's put that on the logo. So who's my first big customers? The Navy. Okay. What color does the Navy like? Blue. Well, let's throw in some blue. That name, Pratt & Whitney, Fred Bunchler, when he left, got permission to buy that name. And why not? Everybody knew in the industry the name Pratt & Whitney. Machine tools, measuring. Let's all combine that. Quality. So I'm going to keep that Pratt & Whitney name. And then what little tagline do I want to put in the bottom? Dependable. You know, as I get older, hopefully not much older, if you could sum up one person's whole career, dependable. He's there. He'll work. It'll start at night. Don't worry. Dependable engines. Brilliant, I say. So this is the now.
Yeah.
Now, Pratt & Whitney retirees, I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
There was a 10-year period. All I'm going to say about this is, what the flip were we thinking? Done.
It's the politest way to put it.
That's that good too. When you look at the technology of the Wasp engine, there are some innovations. There's no one big single aha moment, but these are typically the 4 changes that make the Wasp engine reliable and lightweight. 2-piece crankshaft, cast aluminum head with a steel barrel, a single-piece master rod link, 2-piece crankcase. Just a little more in each one of those. Air cooling, as the name would imply, you need a lot of surface area. The more surface area that's hot It's easier to liberate the temperature. So we're gonna have a aluminum cast head. You will see if you come to the museum, as the engines get more and more sophisticated, that pattern of fins on the top will become more and more sophisticated. They'll be closer together, they'll be higher in number. The barrel, the bottom, is a machine piece out of a single piece of steel. Lots of fins. It is press fit and bolted into the cylinder. Probably the number one problem in existing radial engines is the master rod. Pratt & Whitney engineers have decided to make it into one piece, and that master rod will be at the 12 o'clock position, and all the other cylinders with their connecting rods will be attached to it. Single piece. To make a single piece master link, I have to make a two-piece crankshaft for assembly. Two steel forgings, riveted in counterweights, and a very clever bolting and insert arrangement to make it bulletproof. This is the end of the crankshaft on direct drive engines is where the propeller's attached. And then finally the split case. Making it in two pieces, identical pieces for manufacturing and cost control, allows it to change from a casting to a forging, and that change alone saves over 60 pounds in the design. So now if you've followed all this, we have the cylinders with the pistons inside attached to the crankcase. Up the top comes the shaft. This happens to be the pictures of a Hornet engine that the Air Museum was restoring just when I needed pictures for this talk.